The new full-time players for Fnatic, and Keita, who's also from the UK, has been added as a strategic coach at the time of recording this. So the team now is basically going to be the 3 remaining Swedes, so that's long-time member Crims, fairly new in terms of like last 3 or 4 years for Brolan, and obviously Jakino only joined last year. And then you've got, or maybe like beginning of this year, then you've got Alex and Mezii, obviously coming in from the UK, and then as well as Keita joining, he joins technically as strategic coach, not just coach. So Samuelsson, who was the coach before, becomes almost like a director of the division and will do other things as well. And JW and Golden are still listed as being benched, but as far as I can tell, there are no plans to bring them back. I don't think they're sitting there thinking they're going to test them out on LAN stuff. I suspect if they want to retire, go elsewhere, maybe even go to a different game, that is absolutely on the table and available. So actually, I would expect maybe Golden does nothing and maybe JW goes elsewhere. Hopefully he doesn't join Valorant, right? Unless he wants to, right? In terms of the angle that Golden got replaced, listen, that was a while ago and he was going anywhere. But with that said, I think the problem for Golden is this. I haven't seen him go and do a bunch more LAN, so I would like him to have one last chance. I thought he did a very impressive run with the team on LAN, first time around and second time all in all when you look at the pieces he was working with. But with that said, they were so appalling online. He individually was just so whack online. And this whole thing where at the end he just didn't even play Counter-Strike and wasn't even registering any hours. Looks like he just didn't have any fire in him. That is a massive red flag for me. Like, that alone is enough where I don't particularly care. Like, if someone else who's in a small team wants to take a try on him and he can come back, cool. I'm always up for stuff like that. But the idea like a top level team like this should give him another try. Nah, I don't really get it. Like, I almost get like a weird energy from Golden that reminds me a little bit of what I never really fucked with Jdubs, which is the idea that like, so things have to basically go perfect and then it's okay. But if things break down at all, even you're kind of like second guessing yourself, unsure, like the others kind of tell you they don't buy it and you're like, oh, okay. And then you just kind of let them fuck you over, like, okay. So I never really fucked with that angle anyway. I just really respect the results that he was able to get online and how he managed to revitalize players like the obvious one is JW, but even like Flusher was actually half decent again when he rejoined the team. He was completely whack when he went over to Cloud9 initially. Right, so in terms of the Alex pickup to replace Golden as the IGL, I think it's a great pickup. I think it's actually one of the best pickups that, frankly, almost any team could do right now, but especially Fnatic with the position they're in where they're not going to get a massive name. Then, as far as I can tell, they have money, but they probably don't want to break the bank. And for CS, you really just need to turn the division around tomorrow. You can't wait for months and months and a year or something to get the project going. So I think he's one of the most eligible free agents out there anyway, in terms of an IGL. I think on the market, he's arguably the best. I think overall, maybe I would say MSL's slightly better for now because I know more about MSL. But, and by the way, as far as I know, the MSL news of him joining Fnatic was never true. That website, that Twitter account lied. So if there was a world where MSL could have joined, listen, I would have liked that as well. Like, I think Alex is a better style fit. I just think MSL has more tenure, and I also think he actually could have shown a different style himself if he'd have been a team like Fnatic. But I do think the obvious, like, strengths and what end of the spectrum on, I think Alex is further towards it. Because if people don't know, when Flusher joined Cloud9, someone basically asked him when he was the IGL of that team, what is the Fnatic style of calling, right? Because that's what he wanted to do. And he basically said, is you just do sort of like default style. I asked him this myself as well. You just run defaults, basically, and then the individual players make their plays from that. The implication also being that they just, understand already how to con with each other, what everyone wants to do on the same page and all that jazz. So the point is, I think Alex's style looks as though it fits way better with that. It's why in his team with Vitality, it was stacked with veterans and then Ziwu for my money. It's because it allowed that to just make sense with what he wanted to call in the game. I even suspect that's part of where the NBK friction maybe came in of trying to do some more set stuff overall. So I think if you look at this team, I think it's way more up Fnatic's alley. I think people like Crims, Brolan, they will shine in this kind of a style. Like someone like Crims already knows exactly what to do. He's a super vet, can play a ton of roles. And someone like Brolan, you can just turn him loose. And he's got such phenomenal raw aim that you can empower him to be a phenomenal player. And then you've got Mesi as your supportive core anyway, who you've already got a track record with. You played with him in Cloud9. So actually this team could come together real quick, I think. So to me, I thought Alex was the best piece relative to his role in Cloud9. Like, he had his team in winning positions versus all level of opponent, even when he lost Woxic, who on paper was supposed to be his good player, and then people like Alex and, people like Floppy and Zeppa were supposed to be his stars. So consider that. He had his team close to beating basically all the world's best teams without a top 20 player in the world, and the best pieces he had were Esatag, a journeyman, and Mesi, a brand new player who's playing support. And also, let's just throw this in there. Everyone loved when AWPer was having his initial run and had that fantastic 2020 for Vitality to be like, see, was Alex even that good? Blah, blah, blah. It was all online, by the way. So, as far as I can tell, we've yet to find out if AWPer is a better IGL than Alex. In fact, the team's own response to him almost implies he isn't, by the way. But I'll just say this. How's Vitality doing now? Oh, by the way, that doesn't mean that AWPer is bad and Alex is good. But if people are going to say when AWPer does well with Vitality, well, see, obviously wasn't Alex, we don't need him. Well, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as we say in English. So we can do that to you now. Now, I don't think that's the case, but I do think Alex looks like he was a truly good IGL in that team at a minimum, if not bordering on a great IGL when you look at what he was working with and what he was able to do with both for the individual players and the team's success. So in my opinion, Alex will, if he keeps playing and has teams like this and other teams in the future, I think he will either end up as either a great IGL, could go down as like a Hall of Fame player, or a very good IGL, like a very competent guy who'll always have pieces around him that he'll be able to use. For me, funnily enough, he's actually in the kind of category and trajectory that MSL had, where it's like, if you have the right team, you're bordering on a great IGL, like a really great IGL who actually maybe just didn't have enough good pieces. Other times you just look like a very good IGL who can run a team, and with whatever you've got, you'll be all right. I think he's kind of still on that cusp. I haven't quite decided because it's only really been the one core that I've truly seen it on LAN with at the highest level. So I'll be interested to see how his career kind of develops myself in that sense. I get the sense MSL would have been more in the vein of whatever it was Kassad wanted to do that made basically Alex and Kassad not see on the kind of like eye to eye or be on the same page. I suspect Kassad, he seems more of a guy who wants to study a demo, do a bunch of anti-strats, do little tiny tweaks to a tactic, run certain things. So I get the sense that was where some of the kind of dispute or friction came from. I do think that Alex has some very good pieces in this team that he never had when he was in Cloud9. You could even argue some of these pieces are better than the pieces he had in Vitality, which maybe not as a totality because of the incredible experience that squad has. Like, think of this. He's got Crims as a veteran player who can be versatile, do a bunch of dog's body work, or he could be one of the best players in your team and one of the best fraggers. Like, he's just shown that he's a guy where it's just about how motivated he is, how much time he puts in. He gets to a good level. One of the most durable pieces in the history of Counter-Strike from any country. Then you got Brawlan, a super talent, like one of the most promising players of the last 5 years. This guy could be a top 10 player in the world. He looked like he was approaching it last year in online play, but I think he could be a top 10 player in the world like this year if we go back to LANs and this team's half decent. Mezii, like I said before, they have the experience from Cloud9. Actually looked like he was getting better and better and better. Never really looked like he was having any problems in that team. So I actually think he can get even better in this team and be a very legit support player. I do think the team lacks, obviously, a true AWPer. Listen, maybe if JW was only benched, you could test him out if the lands come back. Feels like it's probably not happening, right? I know people have been saying put in Smooya there, like the skills suggest it, but who knows what the fuck he would do to the dynamic of the team. The other obvious names out there, since you've gone international, is Kenny S, Guardian. Like, these are people I would at least consider all these names for different reasons. I do think people are over-forcing the whole Smooya angle because they're from the UK. I've never really understood that thing. I know people are about to go crazy with this for that whole, like, Woxic Xantares team, but I don't really get this deal of being like, oh my god, imagine if all these people from the same country played together. That's cool if they also are, like, amazing pieces that all fit together. It makes sense. They want to play together, and then it just so happens speaking the same language is going to make them better. In this scenario, you're just saying that just because Smooya has a British flag and Alex is from the UK as well. Like, that's not a good enough reason for them to play together. Like, at this point in time, Smooya has to, like, keep earning his way back to the top. He doesn't necessarily just get gifted it because it's been external to the server stuff that's been his problem before. It ain't about how sick he is at fragging people, is it? So I have to say, personally, I'd consider just shelling out for, like, an ACOR or a Farlig or someone instead of that at the point, because then I doubt I'm getting the same issues. But okay, I wouldn't hate it as a future move. I just don't think it's as necessary as people are going to try and imply. In terms of Mesi, I think he was one of the revelations of Cloud9. He's one of the only players that coming in, when they put the angle on what he could do, he actually did everything they said he would. Like, he was a really smart player who looked like he studied the demos, was a legitimately good supportive player, despite having no experience at tier 1, was able to stay alive, as he'd want to play like that too, use his skills well, like knows when to use his aim, when not to use his aim, when to play positionally, seems to understand utility usage, how to be a supportive element around, in theory, more skilled players or players who are getting more of the resources. So I think he was doing his job in Cloud9 like Alex. I mean, I'd just say this if people think, well, the Cloud9 sucked. Who do you think was getting him in that position? Was it fucking Floppy and Zeppa? No, it wasn't. Was it Woxic? It sure as fuck wasn't. Was it ErikHillestad? I mean, ErikHillestad was alright. Was it Alex's AWPer? No, it was Alex's IGL, and Mesi played his support role pretty well, because there's 2 players out of your 5 that are doing their jobs, and then ErikHillestad was a pretty decent fill player, right? For me, that was the way that team ran, and then the firepower just wasn't good enough to get him over the line, which makes sense. In terms of Keita coming in, I can't say too much about him. He's not a person I've particularly interacted with him. I haven't done one of my shows. Maybe that'll change. Certainly seems like an interesting guy. I'm not too sure, because I didn't think Cole was that good tactically. Looked like he had some anti-strats. It felt a lot more like Blamef just played off his feel in the game, and that's why he watches a bazillion demos, so he feels like he sort of screen-watched all the games, and he can see him all in his brain. I never really got the sense of like some super tactical team. It seemed that one of the areas they had more flaws in. But with that said, Fnatic wasn't either. Like the Samuelson guy, as far as I could tell, yeah, maybe he did some of the work. He came up under Golden, and with Golden rather, in the academy squad, and under the likes of Jdubs. So I got the sense personally he wasn't like a super duper coach. Seemed like he did an alright job for the team he had. So maybe in this team the point is Keita like teams up with Alex, is very much under Alex, but does some of the kind of like Dog's body work for him, does some of the basic stuff looking in demos, suggests things, then Alex makes the read. Because I also think the Cassard issue is this. If you're Cassard, relative to your role, you're a superstar at your role, you're one of the names. In fact, when you do a project, people are going to judge you in terms of the results of the project, not the players, and then you're just an afterthought like some of the other people in the scene. So what I would say is this. If you are Cassard, if they're not going to do what you want, there is no point being there anymore. Other coaches, you have to kind of just work with what you've got, the players you've got, the people you've got. You can't necessarily pick and choose. So it kind of makes sense how they've ended up in this situation. I don't really know, ultimately, though, if this is a team that can actually win. Like, I think if you look at them, they're a piece away from potentially being really interesting. I think they have potential to be at the outside of the top 10 with this team, like real potential, because they've got Crims, they've got Prolan, Mesi's. Like, I think enough pieces are there that it looks legit. I think the pressure on Giacchino is enormous. I personally would suggest he won't make it. I think he's probably the easiest to replace, though, with like a Star Rifler or an AWPer. You can try and reclaim an AWPer. I could see them getting a really nice framework of the team set up, get Crims going well again. Alex and Mesi know how to play that. I think the pieces are all there. There doesn't even seem like this big real overlap. Like, this all seems like it should make sense. I don't really fuck with the idea it's not a Swedish team anymore. It's Fnatic, for fuck's sake. That is absurd. Like, however they let it all slip, whether it's financial, whether it's the way the scene developed, whether it's what they did with their own players, how they let slip to this point, that will be a mystery for documentaries to study in the future. I hope one day they can maybe go back to being Swedish again. But quite frankly, this would be a good step to doing that. Like, right now, if you're Fnatic, you need to just get good again. You need to actually be relevant again. You need to have good pieces again. If you do that with this lineup, maybe you can then consider backdooring your way into being Swedish again, or gradually bring in Swedish players until it's the option. But if you're bad anyway, then the players were just going to go to NIP or other teams anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And there's so many international squads, unless you're actually very legit or can pay well, maybe they go to an international team instead of Fnatic anyway. It doesn't really have the same draws it used to back in the day, right? With that said, I do think this looks like a pretty solid team, and I like the additions they've had.
Hey guys, it's Thooorin, also known as 944. Don't forget Thorin's YouTube channel.
This video was kindly supported by Kris with a K, Lager15, Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Shenlong, Travis Goff, Wisetown, Zachary Carter, Zack Schmidt, ochs, Alexander Rao, Animosity, Butt Pounder 420, Kris, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, John Shelton, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and a special thanks goes out to both Jerky's Minion and Joshua Gardner. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask one of those questions for my video AMA. Do you want teasers? Find out who the guests are for my upcoming shows. Maybe you even want to be a nerd having a long 2 or 3 hour discussion with me about anything on one of those video discussions. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.